11:30. So for lack of a chairperson, on behalf of the law department, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll take roll. Executive Innamorato.
Here.
Council Member Hallam.
Here.
Council Member DeMarco. Here. Okay, now is the time, since this is a newly constituted board, to entertain motions for a chairman of our Board of Elections. Yes.
Councilmember Hallam, I would like to make a motion to nominate County Executive Innamorato as the chair of the Board of Elections, and I would ask for a second.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other motions for chair? That being the case, I'll vote starting by Ms. Hallam,
Yes.
Ms. Innamorato, Executive Innamorato,
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco. Okay. 2-0, 1 abstention. Executive?
Point of order. For the record, I would like to ask that Mr. DeMarco submit an explanation for his abstention.
Sure, because currently sit today, involved in litigation. As we sit here today, we're still involved in litigation until the meeting is concluded, and that's why I felt I should abstain.
Thank you for that, Councilmember DeMarco.
Okay. If the chair permits, I would request approval of the minutes of the November 27th, 23 certification meeting. None of the three of you were on the board at that time, but the board then is different from the board now, and it's your obligation to approve the minutes. And Mr. Voy and I and everybody else will submit to you. They're accurate. And the voting point was certification of the November election minutes.
Great, thank you. I move to accept the minutes.
Second.
Can we discuss them for just a second?
Sure.
I would just like to say, one of the things, because this is going to come up in the meeting, one of the things that struck me in reading the minutes from that meeting was that there were over 1,000 ballots that had been submitted by voters in Allegheny County that were not able to be counted because they were received at the warehouse late because of the post office. You know, and these folks, these are Democrats, independents, and Republicans alike. You know, they're taxpayers, the residents of the county who didn't have a chance to have their voice heard because the post office failed to deliver these on time. Okay, so since we're going to be talking about some other things that pertain to this, I thought it was important that we mention that, and one of the reasons why some of the other actions we're looking at taking are being taken today. Thank you.
Next would be public comment. There are a number, oh, we didn't vote on it, did we? I do apologize. Could we vote, member, to approve the minutes? Member Hallam?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
Chairman Innamorato?
Yes.
Thank you. My error. Next are public comments. We have a number of them, some of which were received after the 11:30 yesterday deadline. With the chair's permission, I'd entertain those comments because it turns out there's a little bit of confusion about where on our website that deadline is. So rather than put form way over substance, I'd permit that those additional 3 or 4 people to speak. So with that, I'd start with the first person, Bob Howard. And everybody's subject to the 3-minute limitation, and Mr. Harhut runs the timer.
Bob Howard, Marshall Township. As an active voter who votes by mail-in ballot, I see no reason for additional ballot return sites. Every mailbox is a drop box. It was noted in the resolution that it was for convenience. None of the drop boxes are more convenient than the mailbox at our front doors or at the end of our driveway. In most cases, a voter has to get in their car and drive to a drop box versus walking to their mailbox. When it comes to ballot security, I have used the U.S. Post Office in every election since mail-in ballots were used. Without exception, my ballots were delivered to the election division. What independent evidence is there that the U.S. Postal Service is not capable? Besides, every voter can confirm the the receipt of their ballot by checking online or by providing their email address and receiving notification that their ballot was received. If the Postal Service is secure enough to deliver the ballots, why is it not secure enough to handle return ballots? Remember, there are states who conduct their elections by mail. So if not more convenient, and if not more secure, why are you spending money for these extra sites? Why are you incurring the need for extra security and ballot custody concerns? Why create more unnecessary concerns about election integrity? For what reason? I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Next would be Michelle Feingold.
Hello, I live at 6343 Crombie Street, Pittsburgh 15217. I'm here to express my strong support for staffed ballot drop boxes and expanded hours and locations. There is no higher priority in a democracy than access to the vote, and no excuse mail-in ballots have been a huge step forward. The new $8 million vote-by-mail initiative launched by 3 Pennsylvania Republican groups to, quote, ensure Republican victories is good news if the support for mail-in ballots applies to everyone. However, mail-in ballots are just one step. There are several compelling reasons for staffed drop boxes. I usually take my ballot downtown out of fear that it could be lost in the mail or arrive too late to be counted. We've all encountered problems with mail not arriving. Because of current legal challenges, ballot printing might be significantly delayed, giving voters less time to receive and return them by mail. This makes drop boxes even more important. It's easy for me to get downtown during normal business hours. People who have disabilities, work too many hours, don't have transportation, live on the outskirts of the county, or don't have adequate childcare also deserve the security of handing in their ballot to election officials. Please expand the proposed drop box hours and locations, especially to prioritize access for people of color. Unlike some other states, Pennsylvania kept the primary date on the first day of Passover. This means observant Jews cannot vote in person, and several of the usual polling places will be closed. A local staff drop box would help correct this injustice. It is imperative to provide another option for residents of Squirrel Hill and neighboring communities. My last remarks are respectfully addressed to you, Mr. DeMarco. It's no secret that you refused to certify the results of the 2020 general election and agreed to be a so-called alternate elector for Donald Trump, who refused to accept his defeat and dragged us into the January 6th insurrection. I'm hoping that the last few years have given you the opportunity to reflect on the effect that those decisions and similar decisions made by others have had on our collective faith in our elections, our democratic process, and our country. I ask you to reconsider your previous anti-democratic actions and support the optimal access to our right to vote that I and others are asking for today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Next is Sue Berman Kress.
Good morning. I'm also here to ask that you expand the plan for access to ballot boxes. It is especially important in this election cycle because it is the only way for thousands of members of the Jewish community to vote in the primary. This year, the April 23rd primary coincides exactly with the major Jewish holiday of Passover. Many in the Jewish community don't work or travel during major holidays, and for them, there's actually no way to vote on April 23rd. The only way they can participate in this primary is to vote before the holiday. Having secure ballot boxes makes many people feel more certain of voting in advance than putting their ballot in a mailbox. I'm one of those people. Increasing the number of ballot boxes will allow them the time and the flexibility to make a plan to vote in a way that doesn't conflict with religious obligations, but still helps them to feel very certain that their vote can count. In addition, over a dozen precincts have had to move locations for the primary because they were located in a synagogue or a Jewish community center or something similar. This could be a barrier for voters in those precincts. But if they vote in advance, they won't have to figure out where to go. They won't have to figure out how and when to get there. It just makes the process easier and more accessible for them. In my personal circumstance, I will be out of town on the 23rd because of Passover. I'll be celebrating with my parents, who are both over 90, and I don't know how many more opportunities I'm going to get to do that. So I truly can't be here on the 23rd, and I very much want to make my voice heard in the primary. I'm proud to support the drop-off location plan because I think it helps remove barriers and ensure that more voters, including people in our Jewish community, are able to have their voice heard. Thank you.
Next is Jeremy Kazaz.
Jeremy Kazaz, District 11. Good morning, members of the Board of Elections. I rise today in support of this resolution. Last year, I joined a group of concerned residents from across the state urging the House and Senate in Harrisburg to move the 2024 primary dates in the Commonwealth off of Passover. Sadly, as you know, we jumped into the effort a day late and $1 short. So I want to thank you, Sarah, for doing your best in a tight turnaround time to come up with a plan to remove some of the burdens to eligible voters participating in the upcoming election. Mr. DeMarco, I sympathize with your insistence that county law be followed in this instance and the full board weigh in on the decision, and I hope that after being given the opportunity to weigh in, you too support this plan. Since high school, on election day, I've usually been working or volunteering for candidates at the polls, or in more recent cycles, I've been volunteering for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Nonpartisan Election Protection Hotline. I moved to the Commonwealth 3 years ago, and the 2022 election was my first time ever voting in person on election day, which I only did because the system had been attacked by all of the baseless lawsuits in 2020. I think the lack of trust sown in our elections as a result of those lawsuits is deeply unfortunate. There are established methods for states and municipalities to conduct elections in a way that is secure, but also makes it easier for eligible voters to participate, and ideally in a way that saves the taxpayers money in the administration of those elections. I also want to take the time to commend the staff of the Division of Elections for all the work that they do in running the elections for the county. Their work has been scrutinized and attacked, and every attempt to discredit their office and this county's election integrity has fallen short. I also appreciate the time that they've spent publicly responding to comments and concerns the board received in June, August, and October of 2022. I hope they continue that practice. Please support the resolution before you.
Next is Rabbi Janak.
Hello, my name is Rabbi Yitzhak Ganak. I'm the rabbi of Shari Torah congregation in Squirrel Hill. There are about 300 voters in my congregation, and for many years, my congregation has been a polling place. This year, because the election is held on the first day of Passover, our synagogue will not be able to be a polling place. Furthermore, those 300 voters, who for the most part vote in person, are not going to be able to vote in person. I stand in support of this proposal so that the Jewish community can exercise their religious freedoms and their Jewish requirement to participate in the government of their land. Thank you. And so I ask you to support this proposal in support of these ideologies and these values. Thank you very much.
Next is Matthew Van Bibber.
Fulfilling our sole duty is a very important thing as a citizen. I have taken a lot of vacation time to be here at these board meetings to provide reports to the board. Today's unplanned meeting, because of the ballot return sites and lawsuit, is a very interesting and controversial topic, along with mail-in ballots. Listening to different opinions in our community is mind-opening. What it comes down to is the process of how an elector gets their ballot to the election department to get counted, and only counted one time. The legislator also had some interesting thoughts on SB 99. The one side said the post office is unreliable and a bad chain of custody, so we need drop boxes. The other side said no drop boxes because some of the DAs were able to show there are more ballots than should have been in the drop boxes. Even our own governor in 2021 broke the law by bringing someone else's ballot. In the 2020 general election in Allegheny County, of the ballots that we were able to review, provided a report to the board, I have here, we found hundreds of duplicates looking to be coming from mail-ins. Some changed outcomes to the precinct level. There will also appear to be higher issue rates with votes not getting counted. I also have been an observer at the central count many times on election day and found electors' votes are not getting counted because of issues. However, some ballots were able to be partly recreated or fully recreated by an actual election worker. Also, as observers, we are not able to see everything that's going on at central count. I've seen employees not following instructions. In the 2023 general election, the postman arrived late and missed a deadline to have hundreds of ballots dropped off to central count. So those had to be dealt with in a different way. So hopefully they still got counted. Not every vote is counting in Allegheny County. If we set aside mail-in and look at a precinct voting location, a lot of these issues stated above can be dealt with, such as identification is verified, electors' ballots arrive on time, they see machines process the ballot, and if there's an issue, they can deal with it right then and there. I can still see the need for absentee ballots and mail-ins in special cases, such as what's been already presented. Back to our civil duty. We're able to plan vacations, work, stop and drop locations, now deep in the park apparently, but not at a precinct, a post office, or the current drop box location. What has changed and why has voting become such a burden and inconvenience in 2024, but not past years other than 2020? Voting is only a few days out of the year. Is the county enabling bad behavior to get more people to vote, but also risking a higher error rate with mail-in, where the votes might not get counted? Why is the county encouraging more vote by mail? I believe the board has made up its mind already. However, I'd like you to not vote party line and vote no until a report is produced for the community by the board. The report should have information that has stats and reasons and why, and our election officials are actually going to be manning these new locations, which is very important. How is the county going to prevent people from breaking the law and dropping off other people's ballots, and show how this helps? Have that report show us how it helps our elections, and make sure every vote does count. Thank you.
Next, Erica Kreisman.
Erica Kreisman from Pittsburgh. I think that Allegheny County is a very educated county. Across the country, we have a very educated population. So I was very surprised, Mr. DeMarco, when you wouldn't certify the election last time, because President Trump won here previously, and it was the same system, the same personnel. So I really can't fathom why you wouldn't agree that Mr. Biden won the last time. I do read the paper, but I didn't see any type of explanation. So I would like to ask you to lay out why now, so we can clean up whatever problems you see, so we won't have that problem again in the next presidential election. Thank you.
Next, Laura Kreiner, or Kreiner? Turner?
My name is Laura Cherner, and I'm a resident of Monroeville. I currently serve as Director of Community Relations at the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh. I am speaking today to ask you to support the expansion of ballot drop-off locations. I'm also speaking today as representative of the Pittsburgh Jewish community, though I recognize that this measure will positively impact other communities in need of initiatives providing increased voter access. There are approximately 50,000 Jews in Allegheny County, many of whom will be unable to vote in person on April 23rd due to the unfortunate conflict with Election Day and the first day of Passover. Passover is a major religious holiday in Judaism, and many observant Jews will refrain from work and the use of technology. This directly prevents them from voting in person. Ballot drop-off locations are a crucial and necessary accommodation to provide access for the Jewish community to exercise their participation in our democracy. Early voting and mail-in ballots have been a reliable method for voting for tens of thousands of residents in our region. This measure is by no means unprecedented, as the Board of Elections has allowed ballot drop-off in the county office building foyer since 2020. We are simply asking for an expansion of that existing and safe practice. Mail-in ballots are widely embraced for voting in Pennsylvania. However, there remains a concern about their potential loss or late arrival. For this reason, voters may desire an option to cast their vote in person, even if they are prevented from doing so due to religious observance. It is imperative that we offer voters more avenues for ballot return. Despite concerns about security, this plan, which is endorsed by the Department of State, includes safeguards such as staffing all ballot return sites with county personnel during operational hours, effectively guaranteeing secure ballot submission. It is my hope that we will not encounter an oversight such as this again, with the election date impeding a community's right to participate in our democracy. However, in the meantime, the Jewish community should not have to choose between religious obligation and their right to vote. Ballot box expansion is an important access point for the Jewish community and other communities who will have barriers to vote in person on Election Day. Thank you for your thoughtful attention and consideration of this measure.
Next is Heather Malik.
Hello, I am Pro Extended Access. My name is Heather Malik, and I moved into the city of Pittsburgh at the age of 18, where I cast my first ballot. I currently reside in and am raising my family in the Lawrenceville neighborhood. For the past 8 years, I've participated as Democratic Committeewoman of 9-1 and recently became the 9th Ward Chair. I have a car and a flexible schedule, so provide rides to elders in my neighborhood to go vote at the local polling sites. My husband was born in Israel and was living in New York when we met. He likes to say love brought him to Pittsburgh, and he has fallen hard for our city over the past 22 years. He became a citizen during the Obama administration and uses mail-in ballot and has delivered them to drop-off sites. My son will be able to vote in 3 years and hope he finds the process welcoming and has good access to do so. I'm here to speak up on the behalf of some of the pro-access leadership decisions of our electeds. To be responsive to the community's needs takes understanding through empathy. Here, this involves 2 types of actions: listening and logistical solutions. I am in strong favor of any process that can reduce barriers for my fellow Pittsburghers' ability to cast their ballots. Specifically, I'm in favor of the proposed ballot drop-off sites. This provision is especially important for our Jewish neighbors because of the election day falling on the first day of Passover. Thank you.
Next is Patty Weaver.
Hello, I'm a CPA, and your election systems and standards fall short of what is demanded of the private sector. As elected leaders in Allegheny County, your obligation is to ensure fair and accurate elections and use whatever resources you have to accomplish that. To do so, you need unbreachable systems and internal controls, which your current department does not seem to offer. A review of digital copies, which Matt spoke about, for the 2020 election showed hundreds of duplicate ballots, and other analysis shows over 10,000. The county has 85,000 inactive voters on the roll, lots of dead people who've been there for years and people who've moved. And by state and federal law, your election department is supposed to be keeping the rolls clean. There are only about 12,000 people a year who file change of address forms with the Postal Service. Why do you still have 85,000 on the rolls? Most of them need to be canceled according to state and federal law. What's stopping your department? Requests for absentee ballots are not turned around quickly. That's happened to me. That's happened to my daughter when she applied the first day she was able to. Many people are receiving multiple ballots in the mail. One man I know got 5. You need to spend your resources abiding by the spirit of the law. You have enough things broken in the system that you need to be fixed that are a higher priority in Allegheny County residents that drop boxes of locations that add complexity to your system and require manpower that could be better used doing federal and state mandated security. Unless you have someone who can watch the drop boxes 24/7 with multiple cameras at each site, you run the risk of invalid ballots being commingled with valid ballots. Geolocation technology combined with video cameras located mules who nightly dropped off hundreds of ballots at multiple sites in eastern Pennsylvania in the 2020 election. How do we know that's not happening here? There are more convenient like Bob Howard said, there is no more convenient drop-off box than your own mailbox. Separately, do our machines have issues? On Monday, or actually Sunday, Dar Leaf of Barron County, Michigan, wrote to Representative Jordan that foreign nationals have been accessing their voting machines and they're not secure for elections, that there are Serbian foreign nationals with no background checks entering our election system while the votes are being counted. There are individuals in the U.S. who are conspiring with these foreign nationals and who've been directed and instructed to access them and interfere with election machines during past elections, including the November 2020 election. Do we have that? We must count our ballots by hand and review IDs to verify our machine counts, because this could be happening here. And Sam, you're justified in not validating the 2020 election because these things are happening.
Next is Shirley Taylor.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shirley Taylor, and I reside in Penn Hills. I'm asking for you to support the decision to add these extra sites for the mail-in ballots. I believe that the action taken by the county executive were designed to provide all voters in Allegheny County expanded access to voting, in addition to the voting services that have always been provided at the county office building. With regard to the benefits of expanding options for mail-in voting, it automatically removes a lot of the systemic barriers designed to stop us from voting, discourage us from voting, or just being an informed voters. And because of their convenience, there are studies that show 65% of voters support no excuse mail-in voting. I'm sorry. You have to forgive me. I just got news a half hour before getting here that my nephew was found dead this morning, and I just cannot get it together, but I'm trying, so please forgive me. I want to say that prior to the proposed installation of these new sites, the only option that was made available by the previous county executive administration was that every voter opting to vote by mail had to return their mail ballot downtown, despite the fact that a minimum of 162 communities make up the electorate. Ideally, there would be a centralized drop box location for each of the 13 county districts. But if not that, at least an average of no less than half of the communities served, which would require 6 to 7 satellite locations. I do agree that the hours of service are inadequate, and I would like consideration be given to, as far as the hours are concerned, that if it's not too late to put that question on the primary ballot for the voters to provide their input as to when it's convenient for them to vote, or either work with some of the social service organizations. When it comes to the cost, the previous county executive administration refused to install drop boxes that were in place for the 2020 election because of the associated costs. Well, cost is going to be expensive if you keep trying to maintain two systems. So there are designs that are improved that can eliminate some of the expenses that we have in the current process, trying to do it the same with the new. And as far as reliability of the mail, I have a piece of mail here, right here, from a gentleman that lives in Wilkinsburg. I'm in Penn Hills. This is how reliable the mail service is. Thank you.
Next is Ron Bandis.
Good morning.
I'm Ron Bandes. I live in Squirrel Hill. I've been a judge of election here for 13 years. I was the League of Women Voters Election Integrity Director for 2 years. I have briefed the Secretary of the Commonwealth on election security. I briefed the National Security Agency for 2 hours on election security with 45 agency employees in attendance. I wish to speak today about 2 things. The first is that I'm glad the county has decided to put the question of ballot drop-off locations to the full Board of Elections. This is as it should be. That said, I believe that the resolution before the board needs adjustment with respect to the proposed locations for ballot drop-off. While it is very convenient for me to have a drop-off at the Squirrel Hill Library, which is the polling place where I vote, I note that this area has very high turnout and has little need for this benefit. When Act 77 had just been passed, the county had a ballot drop-off at CCAC in Homewood. This is a much better choice, as the 13th Ward has some of the lowest turnout election districts, although it also has some good ones. The second matter I wish to address is transparency. The Elections Division could stand much improvement in this area. First of all, when attending logic and accuracy tests, I've been told twice by David Voy that I was there to observe, not to ask questions. Another person reported the same experience to me. Anyone who has attended a canvassing of the ballots knows that you can't see much on the closed-circuit TVs and that it's hard to even understand what is going on. When a member of Vote Allegheny asked for the written procedures that are followed in canvassing ballots, he was told there were no written procedures. If these procedures exist, then the law requires the county to provide them upon request. If the procedures do not exist, then this demonstrates incompetence on the part of the Elections Division. I worked in information technology for half a century, and I earned a master's degree in information security and policy from Carnegie Mellon University. Just as a policy is not a policy unless it is written down and published, so is a procedure not a procedure unless it is written and people are trained with the written procedure. Without a written procedure, the canvass is extremely vulnerable to error and worse. Without a written procedure, there can be no meaningful observation of the canvass. Without a written procedure, there can be no meaningful audit of the procedure. And today, I call for an audit of the procedure to canvass ballots to be conducted by a disinterested party, perhaps the county controller, or better yet, a party outside the county government that possesses actual expertise in election integrity, such as the Election Verification Network. EVN is the preeminent, decades-old organization whose members are the top names in election integrity. They include government officials, computer scientists, lawyers, non-governmental organizations, and other activists, all with expertise in election integrity. Thank you.
Next, Todd McCullum.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief and on point. My name is Todd McCollum. I live in the 26th Ward, 15th District of the City of Pittsburgh. I'm the chairman of the City of Pittsburgh Republican Committee. I'm also a plaintiff against the county executive questioning her authority to initiate ballot drop-off locations without a Board of Elections vote. I felt it was my duty to speak on behalf of the 30,000 plus Republicans in the City of Pittsburgh and countless other conservative-minded others throughout the city. Many like me are not supporters of the drop-off system, and I'll come back to that in a moment. If I may speak to the board individually about the lawsuit itself. First, Councilman DeMarco, thank you. Simply, thank you for standing for the rule of law and allowing me to speak on behalf of the Republicans of the city, whose voices are too often drowned out or disregarded. Councilperson Hallam, you know me, we've met. When I was asked to be involved in this, I did have you in mind. You know my feelings about people and parties monopolizing certain issues. I engaged in this so that you had your right to vote as a board member. County executive, you had to have known in advance that this decision was wrong without the Board of Elections involvement. Fortunately, this issue was solved quickly, simply, and equally as important, cheaply. However, reckless decisions like this in the future may needlessly cost taxpayer dollars. As to the drop-off locations themselves, I fail to understand the necessity. I certainly question two in the city when one downtown is centrally located. I cite a report of the Biden administration pledging $5 billion to the U.S. Postal Service for a decade of voting improvement. That money was passed and earmarked for the expansion of the Postal Service, delivery capacity in underserved areas, and in support of mail-in ballots. This money was allocated. The Postal Service has a vested interest in having mail-in ballots delivered on time and securely. Every neighborhood has a post office. Every house has a post office or postman. In addition, additionally, drop-off locations only cast a shadow of doubt on the election results and sow seeds of discontent. I ask that a public hearing be held in the light of day to answer all questions and the legitimacy of the process should it be administered. Thank you.
Next, Diane Schmidt. Although it was unclear if she were going to speak. Then lastly is Alex Krigo. Mr. Krigo, I know you're here. No, it's just somebody else?
Good morning. My name is Alex Kriego. I reside in Allegheny County, City of Pittsburgh, Beachview community. I stand in favor of drop boxes. In reality, this is not a drop box issue, but a voter suppression issue. This issue is a disenfranchisement of marginalized communities. Less boxes equal less votes. It hurts those that are the working poor, those that are working two jobs and cannot access the polls readily. Okay, it also hurts disabled, and it hurts my disabled veteran brothers and sisters that might have prostheses or may not be able to get to the box, the polling places. This is about Mr. DeMarco, politics over people, power over people. This exercise is not about drop boxes, okay? And see how much time I have. When Act 77 was initiated, the Republicans went up there and pushed for mail-in ballots, et cetera, et cetera. When you lost, all of a sudden, you want to stop voting. My Jewish brothers and sisters, Passovers, you all stopped, didn't want to change the date. So there again, you have suppressed their votes. It cost our county, which my understanding that you had to move 15 polling places out of the Jewish community now because of Passover to another location. Okay, Mr. DeMarco, you opened up and said 1,000 ballots were late, okay? I am from the Postal Service, and occasionally, yes, mail gets late and it gets delivered. Ever since Mr. DeJoy became the Postmaster General, he has slowed the mail down, okay? So let's stop playing with the mail and the Postal Service. We know what happens. If you don't mail it early, it may not get there on time. So what I'm going to end up, I got 45 seconds here. I'm going to end up with John Lewis says, if you see something that is not fair, that is not right, not just, you have the obligation to do something about it. So do something right that is right for the Allegheny County, that is right for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Let's go ahead with these drop boxes. Thank you very much for your time.
Next is Roy Blankenship.
I think he broke it. That was a mic drop. He did a mic drop. Hello. First First off, my name is Roy Blankenship. I'm community organizer with BPEP, the Black Political Empowerment Project. Mr. DeMarco, I know you're familiar with us. We helped with the lead and in some of the Dropbox installations and the work on that. We wanted to say that we're fully here in support of the expansion and seeking that hopefully minds are changed and that we get a unanimous vote for this to show that all of Allegheny County is working for the people. Secondly, I want to thank all my partners and friends that are in the room, partnering organizations, especially our Jewish friends, for what they are standing for and we're support. I'm going to stop for a second. I heard a gentleman mention law. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, we all live under the banner of the U.S. Constitution. And that Constitution gives us the right to religious freedom. Under that right of religious freedom, no one should be abridged to any right that involves the American government. And this would be an abridgment of that right. Secondly, the Pennsylvania Constitution also, which Mr. William Penn, when he founded this state, this great state, he made the oath and the promise that Pennsylvania was supposed to be sort of a religious holy project. So that guaranteed the rights of a lot of others in this room and all of us that are voters under the banner of the Constitution, Pennsylvania and U.S., that we should be and have a government that works to make things convenient for us. The drop boxes, we support the drop boxes 100%. We do understand that there needs to be tight security on those drop boxes and that those drop boxes need to be monitored, so that's no problem. But I do see a serious infringement upon the marginalized, their rights. I am ward chair for the 30th ward, and that's 15210. If you look it up, my whole ward is considered marginalized. That is the area code. And I've spoke with the residents in my community. These drop boxes will help. But under a constitutional warning, no American's rights should be bridged or broken. And thank you, Sarah, for stepping out on the ledge. Thank you.
Next is Tamisha Long.
Tanisha Long. So first I would like to say that I appreciate County Executive Inamorado's aggressive move to expand voter access. But I also appreciate being able to give public comment on it as well. So I do think that this is a good solution. Because if we're hearing from the public today, there are some things that kind of caught my attention. Some members of the public believe that having a mailbox is enough, but they ignore the fact that not everyone has mailboxes or homes. And those are voters as well. When I hear people say that we have ballot mules who creep through the night and stuff ballot boxes, that's simply untrue. I think that, when you are able to argue in favor of limiting voting options, you're arguing from a place of privilege. And you forget that there are people who don't have access to public transportation. You forget just how large our county is and how unreliable the PRT is. I think you forget that not everybody has a car or a vehicle or the ability to get downtown. You forget that downtown parking is insanely expensive. You forget a lot of these things. You forget that there are people whose religions make it so that they cannot vote on the day we're supposed to vote. So for all of those arguing against drop-off boxes, I would ask you to check your privilege and understand that there are people who are not you who deserve to vote as well. And when we're talking about people who do not have that same level of access to voting, I would also like to remind people that we have over 1,600 people incarcerated in the Allegheny County Jail. And one of the things I would ask this Board of Elections to do is get a representative from the county to go pod to pod to do that registration. I know the jail claims that they encourage people to register to vote, but I've seen what that effort looks like, and it's not there. So while we don't have a drop box at the jail, we do have the ability to make sure that the people in the jail get an opportunity to vote. And I saw what you were able to do with the All-In Allegheny County survey, where you were able to do the outreach to the unhoused. And I would ask that that outreach happens as well when it comes to voting, because unhoused people, even without an address, have ways that they can vote. They can register at shelters. And a lot of them don't understand that, because understandably, it's not the first thing on their mind. It wouldn't be the first thing on my mind either if shelter was the first thing on my mind. So I wholeheartedly support the drop boxes, but I would ask that we be a little bit more intentional and get some of those drop boxes in Black communities. Come on. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Next is Mohammed Masir.
Ditto. No, I'm joking. I hate talking after Tanisha because she says everything that I kind of want to say. It's absolutely true. Of course, okay, I guess I'll get my name. My name is Muhammad Ali Nasir. I go by Manny. I did take some notes. I don't really need them. I agree with everything that Tanisha said. Of course, I am in favor of the drop boxes, but I also am appreciative of this being included in the democratic process. You know what I mean? I actually come from a community where most of the people are really disenfranchised or really disillusioned and who really don't believe in a democratic process in general. A lot of people lost a lot of faith in elected officials, a lot of faith in the process in general, and really don't believe that their vote matters or that their voice matters. So anything that we can do to reassure them that their voice is important and that what they have to say matters, and the people who are elected are actually representing them, I think is extremely important, especially, as Tanisha said, the folks who are in the ACJ who are often forgot about, the folks that we serve who are in house that most people forget about, and people who are in Black and poor communities that people forget about. I did see the locations of the proposed drop boxes, and again, agreeing with Tanisha, I do wish that firstly, not only that they are in more diverse areas, but that there are more drop boxes, period. You know what I'm saying? Of course, they allow for more people to get involved in the process, especially helping those who are returning or experiencing displacement to give them access to vote. Ultimately, elected officials work for the voters. Elections administered without, some of these, I guess, the processes in general, they result in a lack of lack of communication between elections, and they create barriers for residents or our county, and they fail to serve the Allegheny County voters. Damn, I should have just stopped at the ditto. I think I did better then. But ultimately, I am in favor, and I think the majority of the people who spoke are also in favor of these drop boxes. But I would ask the board to think about expanding to not only more drop box locations, but in more diverse communities. Thank you.
Next, and I think this is the final speaker, if I'm right, is Brian Neft.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Brian Neft. I'm from Mount Lebanon, and I just want to say there's not much that I can add to those that are in support of the resolution to add drop boxes across the county. I will just put my 2 cents in that the right to vote is sacrosanct. Yeah. People work too hard to get that right to vote, and we should be doing everything we can to facilitate votes everywhere we can, and that means expanding drop boxes. I'm very happy to support the drop box plan that is up before the board at this time. I certainly would be in favor of expanding it to other locations where they are needed. I would just say, in addition, this year is particularly important given the Jewish community's issues with the Passover holiday. Most of the people that probably are affected by that go to vote at the polls. In any event, they need help to, getting their mail-in ballots to begin with. They need help getting them to where they need to go to be delivered. I'm fortunate enough to work downtown, so I can drop my ballot off at the county office building, and I do most of the time. But people in this county don't have that opportunity, and some people may have to take 2, maybe even 3 buses just to get downtown. Who has that kind of time? Maybe they don't have even the money to do that with. So we should be doing everything we can to be expanding this program, and I'm in support of it. Thank you.
Chair, that concludes the speakers. What we have are emailed comments, a few dozen timely received and an equal number later received. With the chair's permission, I'd like to summarize the ones that were timely received. Everything will get posted, and I think I can summarize the ones that we've received in along 5 minutes, if I may. Miracle Jones, on behalf of One Hood Power, supporting the ballot return sites. Representative Dan Frankel, supporting the ballot return sites. Congressmember Chris DeLuzio, supporting the ballot return sites. Mr. Neff, and I'll include his remarks, but he spoke. Julie K. Freeman, supporting the ballot return sites. Sherwood Johnson, supporting the ballot return sites. Rachel Uzdan, supporting the ballot return sites. Molly Miller, supporting the ballot return sites. Lisa Schwedert, returning the ballot support sites. Lauren Noor Parvar, supporting the ballot return sites. Wendy Levin Shaw, supporting the ballot return sites. Kira Sunshine, supporting the ballot return sites. Rebecca Goldwasser, supporting the ballot return sites. Cheryl DeShore, supporting the ballot return sites. And again, everything will be posted so that the details can be gleaned online. Melissa McCombs from Elizabeth Township, supporting the ballot return sites. Marilyn Burke, supporting the ballot return sites. Joan Bruce, supporting the ballot return sites. Linda Esposto, returning the ballot return sites. Sarah Flanders, MD, supporting the ballot return sites. Lisa Plant, supporting the ballot return sites. Shelley Heigl, supporting the ballot return sites. Nancy Robinson, supporting the ballot return sites. Judith Traster, supporting the ballot return sites. Lauren Baldale, supporting the ballot return sites. Stephanie Small, supporting the ballot return sites. Dr. Rena Levy, Levy supporting the ballot return sites. Miriam Gelman supporting the ballot return sites. Julia Meredith supporting the ballot return sites. Chana Altine supporting the ballot return sites. Nina Butler supporting the ballot return sites. Dennis Amert supporting the ballot return sites. Lost my place. Give me just a minute. There are a few more. Danielle Levy supporting the ballot return sites. And Bathsheba Barber supporting the ballot return sites. And all of these comments, even the ones late received, will be posted promptly. If the chair wants me to follow the agenda, next on the agenda would be the general primary preparations.
Mr. Psitnik, Mr. Boyd, I'd like to ask a question before we go into that.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us when you're going to have the Board of Elections website updated so that there is a link on that website for folks to be able to sign up for comment or to be able to submit written comment in email? Can you tell us when that will be done?
I'll let
Sure, once this
Director
meeting's
Brown.
over, we'll go back and we'll talk with our marketing and special events staff that manages the website and get a date from them fairly soon. I think it's pretty easy to put a link on there to make it obvious. There is one published, it just might be buried within the elections webpage, so we'll make that more prominent.
Right, it's not on the Board of Elections page, and that's the concern, that people that wanted to be able to comment or something. So
Sure.
would it be fair to say that by Monday?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Can I add something too before you get started? While you're updating the website to include easy access to comments, I know we've been getting a lot of questions both by email and in the meeting tonight about two things that I think it would be really helpful if we could just put like a short FAQ information about on the website, about the legal guidelines that we have to follow regarding removing voters from the voter rolls. I've heard a lot of misinformation about, hey, we should remove these people. We legally are not allowed. And so I know that I saw at least one news interview that Mr. Voigt did explaining it really thoroughly, but I'm sure not everybody read that. So maybe information about what is the legal process to remove somebody from the voter rolls, and also procedures for canvassing ballots, if that's cool with everyone else. I just think instead of getting comments about it here at every meeting, we could just post it online under an information section.
Yeah, we can talk afterwards. Mr. Ipsitnik, David, and I, and Chet can discuss and look at the FAQs that we have.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. I am pleased to announce that the planning for the primary election is going very well. Allegheny County currently has 903,000 registered voters. We're up approximately 3,000 from last November. So far, for mail-in and absentee ballot applications, we've processed 106,000. 18,000 of those are being Republican, 88,000 of those being Democratic. We have 57 polling places that are going to be moved for this election. 52 of those have been found so far. We still have 5 that we're seeking locations, and 16 of those locations are due to pass over. We are doing extremely well in our poll worker. We have confirmed 6,753 notifications to confirm them and give them notifications of the online and in-person training are going out this week. We currently have 2 Supreme Court cases pending, which is holding up our ballot printing and mailing. One is for Joseph Odbarka. He's running as a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. And the other is Mr. Anderson, who's running for the Democratic candidate in the 24th Legislative. I believe those briefs were due in the Supreme Court either today or tomorrow. So they should rule on those cases, pretty soon. Once those cases are ruled upon, we will send the announcements where we'll start our logic and accuracy testing to make sure our tabulating equipments work correctly, and hopefully we can get ballots out in the mail as soon as possible. That's about all the statistics I have for you, but I'm available for any questions you may have.
Chairman DeMarco.
Thank you. I'm Mr. Boyce. So to be clear here, the primary is taking place on April 23rd. Today is March 20th, so we're just over a month away, and we don't have a ballot set yet, right? And could you explain to the folks, because I don't think people are going to understand that when we talk about when this thing is settled in the Supreme Court and they rule on those challenges to appear on the ballot, you know, it takes you a few days to create that ballot. You have to set up logic and accuracy testing. You have to test that to make sure that the ballots can be tabulated properly. And only after that occurs can you then authorize the print house to print and mail, correct?
You're absolutely correct.
And so what we're talking about theoretically is the ballots may not go out until almost 3 weeks before the election, hopefully before, but could go out less than, or 3 weeks or less before the election.
You are correct. I mean, generally, we like to start mailing ballots at least 30 days ahead. We are required by law to have them in the mail by 2 weeks, so we will be within those 2 dates.
Good.
Chairperson Hallam.
Thank you. So you said the number 6,753 poll worker notifications went out. Does that just mean we asked 6,753 people to be poll workers, or are those confirmed poll workers?
Those are poll workers that are confirmed. Now, additionally to that, you know, we may have confirmed these poll workers, you know, back in January. We send a notification to remind them to make sure that they're still available.
Okay, and then when is like the deadline that we will know actually how many poll workers we need based off of who signs up for training or who confirms for this election?
Not quite sure what you're asking me. There's not an exact deadline. I mean, even up as far as election day, you have people that call in sick or say that they can't, but we will have a pool of people that we can send out in case of emergency.
So we are still recruiting poll workers just in case?
We were still looking for poll workers.
Open
if we
invitation?
If we have a slot for you, we'll use you.
So if anybody wants to be a poll worker, knows anybody that wants to be a poll worker, it is a great way to learn the elections process from the inside out, to really see how safe and secure our elections process is, and like how it gets a little wild sometimes, but those election workers are really the ones that rein it in. So just wanted to put that out there. And you get paid, hopefully more soon, but we have raised it in the past few years. We've raised the wage for poll workers, so come on down.
If I could do a quick little plug, and thank you, Councilwoman, for that as well. We are looking for poll workers in Moon Township. We added a precinct there this year, so we still need a few poll workers there. We're also looking for poll workers in the Brentwood and Baldwin area, and we are always welcoming poll workers in the city of Pittsburgh. But to further clarify Dave's point, we don't have any polls at the moment that have less than 4 poll workers, which is pretty significant considering where we were a few years ago when we were dealing with 2 and 3. Most of our polls have 5, 6, even 7 or 8 poll workers in some of those districts that have 1,500 plus registered voters.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is labeled ballot return sites, and it's a resolution for the board to consider regarding the ballot return sites. It's my understanding that the board has the proposed resolution, am I right, with a couple of modifications. So we'd ask that that be considered by the board and enacted by the board.
Do a motion in a second.
So I'll make a motion to consider the revised resolution.
Second.
Okay, so motion and a second. Can I explain the revised resolution? Okay. Thank you both for the motion and the second on that. So many of you may know I love ballot return sites. I love satellite voting locations. I love literally anything we can do to get more people to participate in the electoral process. If it was up to me by myself, I would literally have one in every single neighborhood in the entire county. But I saw that we had 5 that were proposed, and I noticed that a big hole that we had was specifically in the Mon Valley. And so because of that geographically, and also because unfortunately the state legislature made Election Day on the first day of Passover, and I want to make sure that no one from our Jewish community is disenfranchised. You shouldn't have to pick between your right to religious freedom and your right to vote. And so as many ways as we can expand on other days, the idea of voting is fantastic. And so the resolution with the amendment adds a location in McKeesport, PA to be determined. And then also adds language in the next paragraph saying, the division submitted a plan delineating the first 5 ballot return sites listed above to the Department of State for approval as suggested but not required by Department of State guidance, and this plan has been approved by the department. Consistent with this established practice, the division shall timely submit a revised plan, including any additional ballot return sites established via amendments to this resolution to the Department of State for approval. So again, I'm very excited to vote for this resolution as amended. I hope that we have longer hours and more sites in the future, and that we don't just do it in presidential years, but we do it for every election twice a year, every year. So excited to vote for this, excited to expand access to voting, and look forward to working with the rest of this board going forward to expand it in the future.
On the motion, moved by the chair, seconded by Member DeMarco. Take a vote. Mr. DeMarco?
Discussion, please?
Yes.
Oh, discussion, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'd like to clarify. A lot of the speakers came up and they talked about drop boxes. This is not a drop box,
No.
okay? This is not a drop box. This is a location which will be staffed by a minimum of 2 county workers. And Mr. Boyd, they will be county election workers, correct?
There will be 3 county election employees at each location.
And there will be a county police officer at each location, will there not?
That is correct.
And there will be access for folks who are disabled at each of these locations, will there not?
Each of the polling locations are accessible to the handicapped.
Now, prior to opening the container or box that these ballots will be placed in, employees will verify that that box is empty, padlock and seal it with a numbered tamper evidence seal, were they not?
That is correct.
That seal number, location, date, and employees' names will be tracked on a ballot box chain of custody form, will they not?
That is correct.
As voters arrive, they will be asked if that ballot is theirs, and if they signed and dated their declaration envelope, will they not?
Correct.
And the staff members that you have working there will visually confirm that each ballot is signed and dated before date stamping it there and dropping it into that box, correct?
That's correct.
Now, after that location closes, how are those ballots being transported to the warehouse?
So there will be a supervisor of the 3 county employees at each location will physically take those ballots back to our warehouse. They will have a county police officer, follow them. And once they get to our warehouse, that chain of custody will be signed off by a member of our staff at the warehouse, where those ballots will be placed in a locked cage with all the other mail-in ballots that's under 24-hour surveillance.
And these locations also have video surveillance, do they not?
Each one of these locations will be under surveillance as well.
Are these locations permitted to have an observer, not a poll watcher, but an observer?
We will permit people to observe. I mean, obviously, they are there to
can't interfere
observe.
with the process.
They cannot interfere with the process, and they could watch.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
You're welcome.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know about the police officer at the ballot return sites. Is that something that is necessary and required? I'm just very concerned about people, we have rules about police at polling places for a very, very important reason. And I just don't want people to be discouraged from using these sites because they see a cop when they walk up.
So these police officers, they'll be outside of the building. They're not going to be inside standing next to the ballot box. Okay. But we're concerned about the safety of our employees. We know that not everyone loves this idea, but I'm more so concerned that my employees are safe and that we're maintaining the integrity of the process. So the officer will be outside just to monitor everything, to monitor our staff's safety, to make sure that everyone is able to access the building and the drop-off locations.
But they won't be with the
They're not going to be standing beside the ballot box. They're going to be placed outside. And they're also going to be there to ensure that the employees are able to load all the equipment into their vehicle. They're going to follow that employee back to the elections warehouse, as David said, just to ensure that the chain of custody is totally followed. That police officer has to sign off on that chain of custody as well. So they're being held accountable just like all of the county employees are.
Okay, I don't love it, but if you can just make sure you give them some guidance to like not interfere with people who are coming to drop off their ballot.
We're working closely with Superintendent Kearns. We have guidance laid out for them. And most of these officers that we worked with, they were around in 2020. They did the exact same thing in 2020. So the protocols that we're following for this are nearly identical to what we did in 2020.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead,
Sorry, I mean,
Councilperson
you know, I talk a
DeMarco.
lot, right? Yeah. Folks, I know a lot of people are going to be torn down both sides of this issue. There are folks who love the idea of having these additional drop-off locations. There are people that abhor the idea of having them. And, you know, unfortunately, when the state legislature passed this bill back on October 3rd, was signed by the governor back on October 31st, 2019, they put this in motion, went into effect here in Allegheny County and across the Commonwealth on January 1st, 2020. We've had to learn to live with mail-in ballots. They are here, whether we like them or not. You know, and they are mail-in ballots. They are not for just one party. Can be used by Republicans. I vote by mail. They can be used by Democrats. They can be used by independents. They can be used by libertarians and Green Party. So no one has a corner on the market of this, okay? And we heard earlier today in the minutes, there were 1,000 people that voted in the November 2023 election whose vote did not count because for whatever reason that mail was not delivered. You know, we heard from members of our Jewish community talking about how important this election is to them, and because it falls on the first day of Passover, you know, they're worried about some of their folks being disenfranchised through their votes not counting. We heard from Mr. Neft from Mount Lebanon talking about how the right to voting is sacrosanct. We also heard how the ballots are going to be late going out due to the challenges for folks trying to get on the ballot. You know, all of these things. My vice chair of the Republican Party took and deposited her husband's, hers, her son and daughter's ballots at the post office in Pleasant Hills last year, and they never arrived. And you know, Mr. Voigt's aware that we try to work and track that down. So there are no guarantees here. You know, again, our job up here as a member of the Board of Elections is without respect to parties. We leave that when we walk in this room. Our job is to ensure that this government administers elections in a free and fair process and gives people the access to ensure that their vote can count. And that's everyone's vote. If someone doesn't like it, they need to take and get out the vote and make sure that they go and vote to have their voices heard. So I will be a yes on this resolution.
Thank you, Councilmember DeMarco, and thank you, Councilmember Hallam, for your line of questioning. I hope that reiterates the thoughtfulness that is going into this type of process. And I just want to reiterate my gratitude for the folks at the Department of Administrative Services, David, for your work with elections, our folks at the County Police, as well as Department of Information Technology. That has really been an interdepartmental initiative that has put so much thought and time and energy into creating this plan, and I just appreciate you all moving and answering and addressing concerns both from my fellow board members but also the public. So thank you for your work, and with that I think we'll take the vote.
Yeah, I was pretty sure. Vote to approve the motion. Mr. DeMarco.
Yes.
Ms. Hallam.
Yes.
Chair Innamorato.
Yes.
Passes 3-0. Thank you. Next item would be new business, unless there's any, other than our next meeting is scheduled for April 8th. 11th? 9th, oh, I'm sorry.
April 9th.
Can I add one thing? Just on afternoon. Okay, can I just add one thing under new business is, it was brought up in a public comment, but I know we've talked about it before. I do not feel the effort to register people in the jail and then get them to vote has ever been adequate, at least in my service on this board for the past 4 years. There are so many people in the jail that are eligible to vote, and I think the most I've ever seen is a few dozen actually participating in that process. And so if we could do what was suggested, I really liked, and actually have a dedicated either elections worker or staff worker or something that goes to every single pod, cell to cell, asking people who wants to register to vote. It is an effort that we still have time to do for this primary election. And I think just getting them on the registration rolls so they can be successful when they leave, or they can still participate in the process during their incarceration, would be a huge, huge help.
Councilwoman,
Yeah.
I object, and let me explain what I object to,
Sure,
okay?
I'd love to.
I object to the government, meaning us as a government body, participating in the election by us going out to register folks. Now, if you want to allow a third-party organization, the League of Women Voters,
Yeah, I'd be
some
cool
other
with that
group, you know, that's fine. I just believe that our role as a government is to administer the elections, not participate in them. And that's why I don't think that our election workers should be doing that.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree with that. I think as long as it's not done in favor of a party and it's done just in favor of register votes, I think that is very much allowed by government actors. But I would say that I would actually much rather have an outside organization like the League of Women Voters be allowed that access. Historically, it's always been the barrier. But again, a lot of that was due to COVID mitigations in the jail previously. So now that those restrictions have been lifted in the jail, I think that I would love to work to make that happen. But we just got to do it soon.
Sure, and you have a commitment from our administration to ensure that we have all of the tools and resources we need from the Department of Administrative Services and our voting department, and also the groups that would go out and do that work within the ACJ knows how to get in touch with the administration there so that they can have adequate access.
Is there a specific person that I should direct an organization that reaches out wanting to do that too?
We'll follow up by end of day.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
What's the motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.